Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet with US President Joe Biden on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly for the first time since he came into office. Netanyahu arrived yesterday and has already met with Elon Musk to discuss this complicated diplomatic trip. During a time of internal strife in Israel, the Jerusalem Press Club hosts Yaki Dayan, former chief of staff to the foreign minister and former consul general in Los Angeles. Hi, Yaki. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into the obvious topic of Netanyahu's meeting with Biden, I wanted to ask about some of the other goals of his trip. He is supposed to meet with Turkey's Erdogan and Ukraine's Zelensky, among others. What does the prime minister want to achieve from this trip?
Let's start with the Zelensky's meeting. It's rather an important meeting because Prime Minister Netanyahu is one of the few Western leaders that hasn't visited Kiev yet. And as you know, Zelensky asked military things from Netanyahu, from Israeli government, which he hasn't delivered. That's because of the sensitivity of the relationship between Israel and Russia, and the fact that Russia is very much present in the Israeli northern border in Syria, obviously. And I think Netanyahu here wants to on one hand, to show some kind of support that he belongs to the Western Bloc that supports Zelensky, but again, without delivering very sensitive systems. If you ask me personally, I think that Israel should have been much more supportive towards Ukraine, and it's not only because this is the right moral thing to do, but more than that, if you look at the entire Western world, and especially the United States, our closest ally, they've been extremely supportive, and they expect Israel to be at the same place. Olaf Scholz, German president that Netanyahu is meeting, is obviously the Iranian issue will be top on the agenda, and the fact that Israel just sold Arrow system missiles. It's a huge deal, $3.5 billion deal. And the fact the war in Ukraine is continuing, that's a huge opportunity for the military industries in Israel. So Germany is somewhere in the top of the agenda. Meeting with Erdogan definitely is an important one. Erdogan has been extremely criticizing Israel again and again. He is somewhere with the Muslim Brotherhood point of view, but at the same time, Turkey has been suffering extremely economically, dramatically, and this meeting between the two hasn't been taking place for 8 years. Erdogan wants to see Israel moving the gas pipeline towards Turkey and the regional cooperation, because even in the military regional cooperation, Israel moved to Cyprus and Greece. Most of the exercises are taking place there, while they before in Turkey. So with Turkey, it's a very, I would say, complicated cooperation. On one hand, we want to extend or to expand the cooperation with Turkey. On the other hand, we take into consideration the very extreme point of view of Erdogan towards Israel, the Palestinian issue, and other issues. So there is an economic potential, but at the same time, less of a military or regional cooperation between Israel and Turkey.
You mentioned our greatest ally, the United States, and the American President Biden comes to sit down with Netanyahu when the two have many disagreements, while they still share some common interests. What will prevail there?
So this is going to be a very complicated meeting between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Obviously, the three main topics that are going to be raised in this meeting, which we have to take into consideration, it's going to be a short meeting. It's going to last an hour or so. So time is extremely limited here. And the three top issues is Iran, which we disagree fundamentally with the United States, which we just saw the understandings, the agreements, call it whatever you want, between the Iranians and the United States, moving towards the release of prisoners, defreezing the Iranian money that was stolen in South Korea, all the way to stopping the enrichment of uranium up to 60% that the Americans is thinking, and Netanyahu is completely not there. The motivation of Biden is to clear the table from any hindrance or any obstacle that might disturb him in a political campaign in 2024. And the Iranian issue is one of them, no doubt. At the same time, Netanyahu wants to put the Iranian both the nuclear military plan and the fact that they support terrorism all over the world and around Israel and inside Israel. And so the best that can be achieved from here, my point of view, is getting some weaponry that Israel wants and the United States has. And we want to see the supply in order to have a credible military threat on the Iranians. And no doubt, again, hearing from Biden what they're saying, but not reinforcing with actions, that they will not allow the Iranians to achieve nuclear capability. So this is one thorny issue that there is disagreement, that this is definitely top on Netanyahu's agenda.
The second is probably the judicial reform.
Exactly. The judicial reform is the second point, in which Biden will say, hey, listen, there is a joint perception or values that Israel and the United States share. We don't want to see Israel diverting from those values. And at the same time, he will say, listen, we provide you a diplomatic umbrella all over the world, in the UN and UN especially. And in order to maintain this diplomatic umbrella, we give Israel, we need the independence of the judicial system and the courts in Israel. And that's vital to Israel. So either you should stop the judicial reform, or if you continue with that, you should reach a broad consensus as much as possible. This is the second point that will be discussed heavily. The third point is which is connected, is the normalization with Saudi Arabia, and I would say the most complicated, difficult issue in this deal, which is the Palestinian issue. The Saudis insist that they want to see tangible concessions, moves from Israel on this issue. No doubt Netanyahu has an extremely problematic coalition that will not allow him to move in this issue. And Biden wants to see Israel not only reinforcing the Palestinian Authority, but also having some kind of major concessions towards the Palestinians. And that's going to be an extremely, extremely difficult issue. So I would say those are the three top issues on the agenda. And Netanyahu has to use the positive no towards those three issues, telling Biden no on those three issues, without the fact that Biden will hear it as a no. So it has to be a positive no on the Iranian issue, but how we can continue to collaborate on this issue, no on the Palestinian issue, and again, collaborating on the Palestinian issue, and same on the judicial reform. So it might be voiced as no now, but as a potential yes in the future. And obviously, he will get from Biden what was promised, visa waiver that is already a done deal. And we all know that next week is going to be announced. So maybe they will make it a bit sooner than next week, and will announce it at the end of the meeting.
We don't have much time left. So my last question is regarding the Jewish communities in the United States and their attitude towards this visit, toward the controversy surrounding the judicial reform, and also maybe this whole issue with Elon Musk and his high-profile clash with the ADL. What do you think the Jewish communities feel? Do they really come to protest against Netanyahu? What's going on there?
So this is an extremely important issue, and that will also be extremely present in the meeting between Netanyahu and Biden, even without being discussed, because the perception of Netanyahu is that he shares the Republican point of view, and most of the Jewish communities in the United States, and Biden as well. And we have to remember that more than 70% of the Jews in the United States vote and support the Democratic side. and they don't want to see the judicial reform as well. So here, at the same time, Netanyahu, and he's also meeting the Jewish communities or the organizations and the heads of them. He will have to make sure that the cooperation between him and the Jewish communities continue, and that they see Israel as a beacon of democracy, and to convince them, because for the time being, they are extremely unhappy from the coalition and what Netanyahu is leading. So this is going to be an extremely complicated issue for Netanyahu, and he will have to bring the right message, and not only the message, but the deeds, because he has to convince the Jewish organizations and the Jewish community in the United States that he's not heading towards the wrong direction as they see it. So that would be also a complicated meeting, but a very important meeting, because at the end of the day, he will have to bring the right messages here, and it won't be easy at all.
Yaki, Dayan, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure. All the best.